at any point, being young and you expressing all the things that you express going to school, being bullied, not being able to partake of activities, Christmas, Easter, and seeing everybody coming back with certain things, at any point, did you ever have it in your mind, like, when I get older, I don't want to do this?
Nah. And this is not to say that I didn't have moments of weakness. But, you know, around the time that you came in the Lord, like when I was 13, I started forming my personal relationship with the Most High. You know, it wasn't really about doing what somebody else is telling you to do. It stopped being about what your mom is making you go to teach. It stopped being about that. You know, it started being about me learning and understanding personal choice, starting to get into debates with older people about the Most High God. Everywhere I would go, I found myself talking with somebody about the Most High God. So I think that was the Most High in one way, shape, or form telling me that, you know, this is your path, you know, and this is the path that you need to choose, you know. And I was, at that time, my thing was just reading Proverbs, you know, reading Proverbs, understanding the wisdom that's in those verses, and applying it to myself, you know. The other things, of course, I read because, you know, you into debate and talking and stuff like that. But, you know, I got into a point where I always had to be able to have these conversations, you know. And when I was in junior high school, I had problems with the guards, right? And they would my mother would make these lavish crowns for me, and my mother would crochet, you know what I mean? And I either had keypads and stuff like that, whatever. They would snatch my hat off. Not even they would snatch my hat off like it was a regular baseball cap. You know what I mean? And yeah, it got to a point where, you know, I had to get the dean involved. My mother had to come up to the school to say, like, you know, these are not hats. You know, we don't consider these hats. You know what I'm saying? So these are not stuff that you just snatch off. And then they would be up to a point where they would just wait for me, and, you know, and these were grown men. These are grown men that were really, in essence, picking on a child, trying to express his quote-unquote religious freedom. But at that time, I clearly understand that a lot of people may be your color, but they're not your kind. You know, so it was always a struggle with people and their tolerance. And I would say this, you know, I never wanted to be the guy that oppressed people for what they think. But I clearly understand that there are people that, you know, Christian, Muslim, Jewish, whatever you practice, Israelite, that, you know, they don't know how to disagree with something. You know what I mean? They don't know how to have the ample attitude, and they will find ways to oppress you because of that difference. Not to have a conversation with you, but will oppress you. You know, so, yeah.
What kind of message will you have for an Israelite child born in this way of life that you've seen the things that you went through?
Right.
That may be wavering or feels a certain way or has one foot in, one foot out. What kind of message will you have for that type of child?
The first message that I would have is form your personal relationship with God. Because oftentimes, you know, when you're young, you can't see it. When you're young, you can't always see that God is talking to you the same way He's talking to everybody else. You know, sometimes the voice of God is your mother or your father talking to you. You know, but God is talking to you personally. You know, God is giving you a certain level of morality. It's guided by your parents, but eventually you're going to be an adult. So you want to start your relationship with the Most High God early. And, you know, oftentimes, you know, it's natural to feel lost. It's natural to clearly understand that, you know, you may not be in the best emotional state, you know, but you have to be able to forge a relationship with the Most High God, because your life is going to be ups and downs. You know, sometimes people, you know, they think they're in the sunken place. Like, get out. You know, you in the sunken place, but you don't have to stay there. You know, there's always a better day for people who are worshiping the Most High God. There's always a better time. There's always strength that can be gathered from the worship of the Most High God. You know, everybody deals with these problems.
Right.
you know. And I think sometimes people think that because you're an Israelite, that these problems are not going to exist with our children, but they are very prevalent with our children. You know what I mean? They're very prevalent with our children. Our children going to, like all kids, going to question things. They're going to try to find their way. They're trying to to find the sense in certain things, you know. But this is what human beings do, you know. Children walk, they're curious, they try to understand their surroundings. And it gets to a point where you try to understand your surroundings in this. And, you know, if they don't have the proper support, they will leave. You know, so if they're trying to hold on, you know, find a mentor. Find somebody, you know, not a manipulator. Find a mentor. Find somebody that's concerned with your growth, concerned with your spirituality and his way of life, that can teach you something, and that is concerned about seeing you grow in the truth. You know, there's people that are there, they want to control you. You know, you don't want one of those. You want somebody that's interested in seeing your well-being and seeing you have a better relationship with the Most High God. So find somebody, you know. It may be difficult and it's rough, you know, and be honestly, a lot of the parents and leaders and teachers, we're not doing the best job that we can do, you know, but it has to happen. It has to happen.
Who are your biggest influences in Israel? You already mentioned a couple of
them. I would have to say, first and foremost, Chief Principal, and the reason why I say that is because it's not for a lot of the reasons why people think. You know what I mean? It wasn't because of teachings or anything like that, because it was much later that I saw him teach like that. But he was a guy that he loved being an Israelite. You know what I mean? Regardless of what. He loved putting on his turban. You know, he just loved being an Israelite. And, you know, he gave me that inspiration to love being who I was. You know, even though he had his bravado about it, you know what I mean? It made me proud. You know what I mean? To always be around, and he would always be that person to, like, he loved being an Israelite. You know what I mean? Like, you know, he would always represent. The other influences that I had, Maury Michelle, and I say that because this man is, you know, to me, he's one of the most consistent people I've known. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, if you know him, he hasn't changed. He has his ups and his downs, you know what I'm saying? But he always was a person that tried to improve his understanding, you know what I mean? And he's always teaching, always bringing the message, you know. And he was candid. You know, he's in a soft manner, but he was always candid, you know what I mean? I would also say Chief Nathaniel. And I say Chief Nathaniel because he was the one guy. A lot of people say, well, he appealed to the youth. That wasn't the reason I was cool with him like that. It's because he loved hip-hop. He was hip-hop. And I love hip-hop. You know what I mean? And that was something that, like, you know, it's not that other brothers didn't, you know what I'm saying? But he was really into it. He was into it. And I, you know, and that's how I vibed with him, because, you know, he got me into rapping. I didn't really want to rap. I wanted to produce music, though. You know what I mean? I wanted to produce music, maybe be a DJ. But he was the one that told me to start writing music. You know what I mean? And he got me on that path. But he was really into hip hop. You know what I mean? Like, when the song come on, and, you know, he was the one that was into it. You know, so. But my other inspirations, as I said, you know, my teacher, Morey O'Shea. You know, Adon Tovia, Morey Tovia. I sat under him. He was a Cohen, actually. I sat under him for a while under his teachings when I, you know, went back to Quahal. But yeah, those are a lot of people that influenced me. And as I said before, Chief Simeon, just his presence, you know what I'm saying, in general, was somebody, you know, and even before he died, me and him had a lot of conversations just about running into him. You know, I got to understand him, you know, in the way he thinks and what have you. And Prince Rishadai, you know, and Prince Rishadai was always a karate guy, karate brother. You know what I mean? Martial arts was his thing. And, you know, he brought that to the table amongst other things, you know. And I got to really, in Shammai, or thank the Most High, I got to really see how intelligent he was. because I knew him as a youngster, but I know as a youngster I just knew him, not, and looked up to him, but I never had a conversation with him. And as we got older, I began to understand that he's a man that studies. You just can't slip anything by principle. We should have, yeah, you know what I'm saying. So and he likes to debate. That's his thing. He likes to debate. He likes to challenge ideas, but that shows intellect. That's how people grow. You know what I'm saying? And it's not personal with him. He's just, that's the way he is. You know what I'm saying? If he hears something and whatever, whether he's right or wrong, he's going to express his opinion based on his understanding and his study. And he does study. So, yeah.
What about Chief Amos?
Chief Amos.
What kind of impact he had on your life? And
Chief Amos had a weird impact because when I was young, I didn't like him. Yeah, it's weird. When I was young, I didn't like him, but I didn't understand him. Like when I was young in the camp, I remember me and Molly got into something. You know what I'm saying? His son, and I think we were just fighting over the pinball machine. I was upstairs in Benna in Buffalo, and Chief Amos was always in the camp, right? So he was there, and he got upset. Like that I pushed his son. He said, "You pushed my son," and he pushed me. You know what I mean? Like, right. And I got upset. I was crying. I went to my mother. You know what I'm saying? Whatever. But then later when I got to know him, I understood the backstory behind it. You know what I mean? I was young. I felt hurt, but I understood the backstory behind him, and knew that he was going through a lot of pressure. He was dealing with a lot. So, okay, now it all makes sense. You know what I mean? When, because he was dealing with a lot of frustration and, he had to be protective of his children. He was dealing with a lot. I'm not going to get into it, but, he was dealing with a lot of people that know that was going on around that time with him. He was dealing with a lot of stuff, you know what I mean? And not understanding that these brothers were still young. You know what I mean? I was a baby, I'm a young guy, but, these brothers were still young at that time. You know what I'm saying? So a lot of the aggression and stuff like that they were dealing with, sometimes it carried out in different things. But as I got older, Chief Amos, our relationship, was good because he trusted me. And I was able to gain his trust as a person, and I know he wasn't a person like that trusted a lot of people just by the nature of a lot of things that were going on at that time. He kept his circle kind of small, you know what I mean? And I showed myself to be like, I was a kid, you know what I mean? But because we were there, I remember one time he just said, I told him, me and your son, we're working at the same job now. And he said, yeah, cool, now you can watch him. You know what I mean? Watch him for me. So that's the type of person that he was. Like, he can see the talent in certain people and, the skill, and especially in the 90s when we were in the basement, I was just bringing people to the camp left and right. You know what I'm saying? And he just stopped me one day. He said, I was just introducing like certain people to everybody. And he just said, Most High was going to bless you for your works. You know what I mean? So, and that was cool. And then, he see you, he just smile. Yeah, smile, ask you where everybody's at, and even during the breakup, I saw him one day on St. John's, you know what I mean? And, he talked to me, you know what I'm saying? Like, same thing, he said, Shalom. He just said, how brothers is doing, you know what I'm saying? He still had his concern and stuff like that. And I'm like, everybody's okay, so with him, it's like, he's not a person that, that I saw that had a high level of malice in his heart for certain things. You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, like everybody, his life was rough, you know what I mean? And you understand later a lot of the stuff that he dealt with, on a regular basis. Yeah, it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy, you know what I mean? And I think what often happens with us is that, we judge people, but we don't know what they be going through at the same time. We don't know what was in that man's shoes. You know what I mean? So, You know, all that problem I had with him when I was like 6 years old, you know, it changed because I got to know, like, listen, this is a young man that was struggling. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
He's struggling to find himself, struggling to deal with people, struggling to deal with he dealt with a lot of jealousy, man.
Right.
He dealt with a lot of jealousy, and, you know, I didn't know that at the time. You was young and naive, but you know, he dealt with a lot of jealousy from a lot of people, man, and it was deep, and that takes a toll on the spirit. You know what I mean? And he held a lot of things down the best way he could. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Best way he could. So I got to commend him for that.